My mother has been telling my daughter I abuse them. But I have footage. The notification sound from my phone made my hands shake as I read the text from my lawyer. Emergency hearing moved to tomorrow 9 a.m. Judge wants to review new CPS report. Come prepared. I set the phone down on my kitchen counter and stared at the wall of evidence I've been building for 8 months. 37 USB drives, each labeled with dates and times. Hundreds of hours of audio recordings. Video footage that would make any parent's blood boil. All of it capturing the systematic destruction of my relationship with my 8-year-old daughter Emma. My mother, Patricia, had no idea that every conversation, every visit, every moment of her poisonous manipulation had been recorded. The woman who raised me had become the monster trying to steal my child, and tomorrow I was going to prove it. It started 18 months ago when my ex-wife Sarah died in a car accident. Emma was 6, traumatized, and I was drowning in grief while trying to be the father she needed. My mother offered to help. Just temporarily, she said. Until you get back on your feet, David. I should have known better. Patricia Chen had spent my entire childhood rewriting reality to suit her needs, but I was desperate. Emma needed stability, and I was working 60-hour weeks as a software engineer just to keep us afloat financially. When my mother petitioned for temporary guardianship, claiming I was emotionally unstable and potentially dangerous, I thought it was a misunderstanding that would be cleared up quickly. That was 14 months ago. Since then, CPS had received 17 reports about me. Allegations of physical abuse. Claims that I screamed at Emma until she cried. Stories about me threatening to get rid of her if she didn't behave. Each report detailed and specific enough to keep my supervised visits under constant scrutiny, but vague enough that I couldn't definitively prove they were lies. My mother was good. She'd had years of practice. But I was better. 3 weeks after the first CPS report, I installed a hidden camera system in my apartment. Not just obvious security cameras, but professional-grade equipment that recorded everything in 4K. Audio devices so sensitive they could pick up whispered conversations from across the room. Every surface that could hide a recording device had one. When Emma came for visits, I documented everything. Her laughing as we made pancakes on Saturday mornings. Me gently redirecting her behavior without ever raising my voice. Hours of us reading together, playing board games, having the kind of normal father-daughter interactions that Patricia claimed never happened. But the real goldmine was what I captured during Patricia's surprise visits to check on us. I had footage of her coaching Emma in the hallway before visits. Remember, sweetheart, if daddy gets scary again, you tell grandma right away, okay? I had audio of her planting false memories. I know it's hard to talk about when daddy hurt you, but the nice people need to know so they can keep you safe. Most damning of all, I had recorded Patricia's phone call to her sister last month, where she laughed about how easy it was to play the system and how she'd never let that ungrateful boy take Emma away from her. My daughter had started flinching when I reached out to hug her. She'd begun asking me why I was so mean when she wasn't with grandma. Last visit, she'd whispered, "Daddy, grandma says you might have to go away if you don't stop being bad." Tomorrow, Patricia would finally face the consequences of her lies. Tomorrow, I was bringing my daughter home. I just prayed it wasn't too late to undo the damage. The doorbell rang at 11:47 p.m., and I knew before looking through the peephole that this wasn't going to be good news. Detective Maria Santos stood on my doorstep with that expression cops get when they're about to ruin your night. "Mr. Chen, we need to talk. May I come in?" I stepped aside, my mind racing through every possible scenario. Had Patricia somehow discovered my recording equipment? Had Emma said something that triggered another investigation? "There's been another report filed against you today," Detective Santos said, settling into my living room chair. She'd been the responding officer on 4 of the previous CPS calls, and by now we had a routine. This one's different, though. More serious. My stomach dropped. "What kind of allegations?" "Sexual abuse, David." She watched my face carefully as she said it. "Your mother claims Emma disclosed inappropriate touching during bath time. Says the child drew pictures showing concerning interactions." The room started spinning. This was Patricia's nuclear option, and I should have seen it coming. She'd escalated every previous allegation when they didn't stick. Emotional abuse became physical abuse, neglect became endangerment. Of course she'd eventually play this card. I had to stop and breathe. That's completely false. I have never, ever touched my daughter inappropriately. Jesus Christ, Maria, you've investigated me 17 times. Have I ever failed a polygraph? Have you ever found a single piece of evidence? I know, she said quietly. But this allegation requires specific protocols. I have to inform you that your visitation is suspended immediately pending a full forensic investigation. Emma will be interviewed by a specialist tomorrow morning. I thought about the hidden cameras, about the footage of every single interaction I'd had with Emma. Bath times where I'd been nothing but appropriate and loving. Me teaching her to wash her own hair, keeping conversations light and normal. Never once crossing any line because there were no lines to cross. She was my baby, and I'd rather die than hurt her. There's something else, Detective Santos continued. The report includes detailed descriptions of your apartment layout. Specific details about your bedroom, your bathroom, even the color of your kitchen curtains. Details that suggest Emma provided very specific information about intimate interactions in these spaces. My blood ran cold. Patricia had been inside my apartment exactly twice since the custody battle began, both times with Emma during supervised visits. She'd memorized every detail, and now she was using Emma's innocent knowledge of her father's home as ammunition for the most devastating lie possible. "I need to call my lawyer," I said. "David." Detective Santos leaned forward. "Off the record?" "In 15 years of investigating these cases, I've learned to spot the real predators. They deflect, they minimize, they blame the children. You've never done any of that. But this allegation, even if we find no evidence, even if the charges don't stick, the accusation alone will follow you forever." She was right. Patricia wasn't just trying to take Emma away anymore. She was trying to destroy me completely. Even if I proved my innocence, even if I regained custody, there would always be whispers. Other parents who wouldn't let their children near me. Background checks that would show the investigation even without charges. The emergency hearing is still tomorrow? I asked. As far as I know. But David, you need to prepare for the possibility that things might get much worse before they get better. After she left, I sat in my living room surrounded by months of recorded evidence, and realized that everything I'd captured might not be enough to overcome this final, devastating lie. Patricia was about to learn that I'd been recording everything. But first, I had to survive what she'd just unleashed. I called my lawyer, Richard Kowalski, at midnight. He answered on the second ring, which told me everything I needed to know about how bad this situation had become. David, I heard. Detective Santos gave me a heads up an hour ago. His voice was grim. We need to meet first thing tomorrow before the hearing. 6 a.m. at my office. Richard, I have recordings of every interaction with Emma. Every single one. There's footage of bath times, bedtimes, everything. I can prove these allegations are completely fabricated. Silence stretched across the line for 10 seconds too long. David, there's something you need to understand about recordings in custody cases involving abuse allegations. The judge might not allow them as evidence, especially if they were made without the other party's consent. Your mother could claim you violated wiretapping laws. My hands started shaking. But they prove my innocence. They show exactly what happened during every visit. They might also be seen as evidence of obsessive behavior. A judge could interpret your extensive recording system as proof that you're unstable. We're talking about hidden cameras in your bathroom, David. That's going to raise red flags regardless of your intentions. The irony was suffocating. The evidence that would save me might be the evidence that condemned me. There's more, Richard continued. I got a copy of the CPS report an hour ago. Your mother didn't just file allegations about you. She's provided what she claims are Emma's own drawings, stick figures in compromising positions. She has a recording of Emma allegedly describing incidents in detail. And David. Emma apparently used your pet name for her, Little Star, when describing these supposed encounters. The room went cold. Only Emma and I knew that nickname. I'd been calling her Little Star since she was 3 years old because of the way her eyes lit up when she smiled. Patricia must have heard me use it during our recorded visits and woven it into her fabricated testimony. How is this possible? I whispered. Emma would never say those things. She loves me. Just 2 weeks ago she made me a Father's Day card in November because she said she couldn't wait. David, I need you to listen carefully. Child testimony is incredibly powerful in court. Even if Emma was coached, even if we can prove manipulation, the damage might already be done. Judges err on the side of protecting children, always. At 12:47 a.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Daddy hurt me in the bathtub. That's what she said, David. Word for word. Did you really think I wouldn't be thorough? Patricia. I screenshot the message immediately. Finally, something that showed her malicious intent in writing. But then another text arrived. Oops. Wrong number. Please disregard previous message. She was creating a paper trail that would make it look like her first text was an accident. Even her mistake was calculated. I spent the next 3 hours reviewing footage from Emma's last visit 4 days ago. There she was, happy and laughing, begging me to read just one more chapter of her favorite book. No signs of trauma, no fear, no indication that anything inappropriate had ever happened between us. In one clip, she hugged me goodbye and whispered, I love you, Daddy. Grandma says I might not see you for a while because you're sick, but I hope you get better soon. Patricia had been preparing Emma for my disappearance weeks ago. At 4:30 a.m., I got another call from Detective Santos. David, I need to ask you not to contact your daughter or attempt to see her until this investigation is complete. That includes driving by your mother's house or showing up at Emma's school. Any contact could be interpreted as witness intimidation. She's my daughter, Maria. I know. But right now, she's also the alleged victim in a criminal investigation. I'm trying to help you here, but you have to follow protocol exactly. By 5:15 a.m., I was sitting in my car outside Richard's office, surrounded by boxes of evidence that might not be admissible, facing charges that could destroy my life, preparing for a custody hearing that would determine whether I'd ever see my little star again. In 3 hours, I would walk into that courtroom and bet everything on proof that might not be enough. At 6 a.m. sharp, Richard's office felt like a war room. Coffee stains marked every surface, legal documents scattered across his desk like battle plans. He'd been working all night, and it showed. I've got good news and catastrophic news, he said without preamble. The good news is that Patricia's midnight text creates reasonable doubt about her motives. The bad news is that Emma underwent emergency forensic interviewing at 4 a.m. this morning. My coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering on the hardwood floor. What do you mean emergency interviewing? Your mother called CPS at 2 a.m. claiming Emma was having nightmares and had disclosed additional details. The forensic interviewer, Dr. Jennifer Walsh, conducted a preliminary session. Richard's face was stone. David, Emma provided specific details about incidents that allegedly occurred last Tuesday during your supervised visit. Last Tuesday. I'd made Emma grilled cheese sandwiches cut into star shapes. We'd watched Encanto for the 14th time. I'd helped her with a math worksheet about addition. Every second was recorded in high definition. What kind of details? She described inappropriate touching that allegedly happened while you were helping her with homework at the kitchen table. She knew you were wearing your blue Seattle Mariners t-shirt. She mentioned the Encanto soundtrack playing in the background. She even described the star-shaped sandwiches. The forensic details were perfect because they were real, everything except the abuse that never happened. Richard, I have complete footage of that entire visit. Every angle, every moment. Emma was never out of sight of the social worker. Nothing inappropriate occurred. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Richard pulled out a legal document 3 inches thick. Because I spent the last 4 hours researching precedent for covert recordings in false allegation cases. There's a 2018 ruling in Washington state, Morrison versus Morrison, where hidden camera evidence was admitted specifically to disprove coaching and false testimony. For the first time in hours, I felt like I could breathe. But here's the complication. Judge Harrison, who's hearing our case today, is notoriously conservative about privacy rights. Last year, she excluded recording evidence in 3 separate cases, calling covert surveillance a violation of family trust. We need a different strategy. Richard spread out a timeline across his desk. Your mother made 17 CPS reports over 14 months. Each escalated when the previous one failed to stick. The pattern shows malicious intent, but we need to prove coordination and premeditation. What about the phone call I recorded? Where she laughed about playing the system? That conversation with her sister happened on September 23rd, correct? What happened the next day? I pulled out my documentation log. CPS report number 12. Patricia claimed I'd been sending Emma inappropriate text messages. And 3 days later, my phone records were subpoenaed. They found nothing because the messages never existed. Exactly. She's been testing the system, learning what works, escalating systematically. Richard marked dates on the timeline with red ink. Every failed allegation led to a more serious one within weeks. This sexual abuse claim isn't desperation, it's the culmination of a planned campaign. My phone buzzed with an email from an address I didn't recognize, subject line, from Emma. Richard watched my face as I opened it. The message contained a child's drawing, stick figures labeled Daddy and Emma in positions that made my stomach turn. Below the drawing, in Emma's careful second-grade handwriting, this is what happened when Daddy babysat me. Delete nothing, Richard said immediately. Forward that to me right now. But as I started forwarding the email, I noticed something in the metadata that made my hand stop shaking for the first time in hours. Richard, look at the timestamp. This email was sent at 5:47 a.m. this morning. So, Emma doesn't wake up until 7:15 for school. She's never awake before 7, not once in her entire life. And Patricia doesn't have internet access on her phone, she's too paranoid about privacy. She only uses her old desktop computer. Richard leaned forward. Keep going. That computer is in her home office. Emma isn't allowed in there unsupervised. There's no way my 8-year-old daughter drew this picture and sent this email at 5:47 a.m. Richard smiled for the first time since I'd met him. David, I think your mother just made her first real mistake. At 7:30 a.m., Richard and I were loading boxes of evidence into his BMW when my phone rang. Emma's school. Mr. Chin. This is Principal Martinez at Riverside Elementary. Emma didn't arrive this morning, and we can't reach Mrs. Chin. Is everything all right? My blood turned to ice. What do you mean she didn't arrive? My mother always drops her off at 7:45. Sir, we've been calling Mrs. Chen's number for 20 minutes. Emma has perfect attendance this year, she's never missed a day without advance notice. Richard was already pulling up Patricia's address on his GPS as I hung up. We're going there now, he said. But David, if they're not there, if she's taken Emma somewhere. The implication hung in the air between us. Patricia knew about the hearing today. She knew I had evidence. What if she decided that keeping Emma away from me permanently was worth becoming a fugitive? We reached my mother's house at 7:52 a.m. Patricia's silver Honda Civic sat in the driveway, but every curtain was drawn tight. Richard knocked while I called Patricia's landline from the sidewalk. I could hear the phone ringing inside the house, but no one answered. Mrs. Chen, this is Richard Kowalski, David's attorney, Richard called through the door. We know you're home. Emma needs to get to school, and we have a court hearing in 60 minutes. At exactly 8:07 a.m., the front door opened 6 inches, held by a security chain. Patricia's eye appeared in the gap. Emma is sick today, she said. She has a fever and can't go to school. She certainly can't go to court to face her abuser. Mrs. Chen, I need to see Emma personally to verify her condition, Richard said in his courtroom voice. As her father, David has a legal right to know about any medical issues. You'll see her when a judge orders it. Not before. The door slammed shut, and I heard the deadbolt turn. She's stalling, Richard said as we walked back to his car. Trying to force a postponement. If Emma doesn't appear for the hearing, Judge Harrison might delay everything pending a wellness check. My phone buzzed with another text from the unknown number. Little Star is learning what happens to children who tell stories they shouldn't. Don't worry, she'll feel better soon. Patricia. This time, there was no follow-up text claiming it was sent by mistake. Richard, she's threatening Emma. This isn't about keeping her from me anymore, she's punishing an 8-year-old for testimony that Patricia forced her to give. Richard screenshot the message. David, I need you to stay calm, but I think we're looking at a hostage situation. Your mother knows we have evidence against her. She knows this hearing could end with Emma being removed from her custody immediately. People don't make rational decisions when they're cornered. At 8:23 a.m., as we were driving to the courthouse, Richard's phone rang. Judge Harrison's clerk. Mr. Kowalski. The judge wants to know why the minor child isn't present for today's hearing. Mrs. Chen's attorney filed an emergency motion claiming the child is too traumatized by her father's abuse to appear in court. Richard put the call on speaker. Your Honor, we have reason to believe the child is being prevented from attending school and court appearances specifically to avoid questioning about false allegations. We're requesting an immediate wellness check and emergency removal if necessary. The judge will hear emergency motions first at 9 a.m. sharp. Both parties need to be present with the child, or she'll issue a bench warrant for Mrs. Chen's arrest for contempt. As we pulled into the courthouse parking lot, I saw Patricia's attorney, James Mueller, pacing near the entrance. No sign of Patricia or Emma. She's not coming, I told Richard. Patricia would rather face contempt charges than let Emma testify under oath about what really happened. Richard checked his watch, 8:47 a.m. David, there's something I haven't told you. Judge Harrison doesn't just handle custody cases. She's also a former prosecutor who specialized in child endangerment. If your mother doesn't show up with Emma in 13 minutes, and if we can prove Emma is being held against court orders. What are you saying? I'm saying your mother might have just committed kidnapping. At 8:51 a.m., as we climbed the courthouse steps, I realized that everything I'd been planning, all my carefully collected evidence, all my proof of innocence, might become secondary to a much more urgent question. Where was my daughter, and what was Patricia willing to do to keep her? At 9:03 a.m., Judge Harrison's courtroom felt like a pressure cooker about to explode. Patricia still hadn't arrived, and James Mueller looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. Your Honor, Mueller said, sweat beading on his forehead, my client contacted me at 8:45 this morning to report that the minor child experienced severe emotional distress upon learning she would have to testify against her father today. Mrs. Chen has taken Emma to Seattle Children's Hospital for emergency psychiatric evaluation. Judge Harrison, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, leaned forward with the expression of someone who'd heard every lie in the book. Mr. Mueller, do you have documentation of this hospital visit? Admission paperwork? A doctor's note? We're still waiting for the paperwork, Your Honor. I see. And which psychiatrist at Children's Hospital agreed to see an 8-year-old on emergency basis at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday morning without any advance scheduling? Mueller's silence spoke volumes. Richard stood up. Your Honor, we have reason to believe Mrs. Chen is deliberately evading court orders. We have text messages sent from Mrs. Chen's phone as recently as 8:07 this morning indicating she has no intention of complying with this hearing. He handed the bailiff printouts of Patricia's texts, including the one about Emma learning what happens to children who tell stories they shouldn't. Judge Harrison read them twice. Mr. Mueller, these messages suggest your client may be intimidating a minor witness. Can you explain? Your Honor, I haven't seen these messages before this moment. That's because your client sent them to my client directly, bypassing legal counsel. Richard's voice carried the confidence of a man holding a royal flush. Your Honor, we believe Mrs. Chen has systematically coached the minor child to make false allegations, and is now preventing the child from appearing in court because she knows her fabrications will be exposed under proper questioning. Judge Harrison's gavel hit the bench like a gunshot. I'm issuing an immediate bench warrant for Patricia Chen's arrest for contempt of court and interference with a minor witness. Bailiff, coordinate with Seattle Police for a wellness check at Mrs. Chen's residence immediately. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number again. Daddy, Grandma says we're going on a surprise trip today. She says we might not come back for a long time. I'm scared, but she says it's an adventure. Emma. I showed Richard the screen. His face went white. Your Honor, we just received what appears to be a message from the minor child indicating Mrs. Chen may be attempting to flee the jurisdiction with her. Judge Harrison stood up. Bailiff, upgrade that wellness check to a bolo alert. Patricia Chen and Emma Chen, ages 67 and 8. Consider this a potential parental kidnapping situation. She turned back to us. Mr. Kowalski, what evidence do you have regarding these false allegations? Your Honor, my client has extensive video and audio recordings of every interaction with his daughter over the past 8 months. The recordings show no evidence of abuse and document Mrs. Chen coaching the child to make false statements. Those recordings were made without consent, Mueller started. Mr. Mueller, Judge Harrison interrupted, your client just fled my courtroom with a minor child while under investigation for filing false reports. I'm going to allow any evidence that helps us locate that child safely. Mr. Chen, I'm ordering you to provide those recordings to Child Protective Services immediately. At 9:47 a.m., Detective Santos called. David, we found Patricia's car abandoned at the Edmonds Ferry Terminal. Security footage shows her and Emma boarding the 8:30 ferry to Kingston with 2 large suitcases. My legs gave out. Richard caught my arm as I stumbled. The ferry takes 35 minutes each way, Santos continued. They could be anywhere on the Olympic Peninsula by now. I've contacted Washington State Patrol, but David. If she's planned this, if she has cash and a destination. Judge Harrison overheard. Detective Santos, this is Judge Harrison. I'm declaring Emma Chen an endangered missing child as of right now. Issue an Amber Alert immediately. As the courtroom erupted into coordinated chaos, phone calls to FBI, alerts going out statewide, my carefully planned evidence presentation forgotten in the face of my daughter's disappearance, one thought echoed in my mind. Patricia had finally played her last, most desperate card. She'd rather become a fugitive than face the truth I'd been recording for 8 months. But now my little star was somewhere out there, scared and confused, probably believing her grandmother's lies about why they were running. The question was no longer whether I could prove my innocence. The question was whether we'd find Emma before Patricia disappeared with her forever. At 10:23 a.m., while FBI agents were setting up equipment in Judge Harrison's chambers and patrol cars were spreading across 3 counties, my phone rang with a call that made my blood freeze. Emma's voice, small and frightened, Daddy. Emma. Baby, where are you? Are you okay? I don't know where we are. Grandma took my phone but she's sleeping now and I found it in her purse. Daddy, I'm scared. She keeps crying and saying bad people are trying to take me away from her. Detective Santos was already tracing the call, frantically signaling for me to keep talking. Emma, listen to me very carefully. Can you look outside? Tell me what you see. Trees. Lots and lots of trees. And there's a sign that says, Fairholm. We're in a cabin and it smells funny. Richard was already pulling up maps on his laptop. Fairholm, a tiny community near Lake Crescent, over 2 hours into the Olympic Peninsula. Remote enough that Patricia could hide for weeks. Sweetie, I need you to know that Grandma isn't telling you the truth about me. I would never hurt you. I love you more than all the stars in the sky. Emma's voice broke. But Daddy, Grandma showed me pictures that I drew of you being mean to me. She says I just forgot because my brain was trying to protect me. My heart shattered. Patricia had been so thorough, so manipulative, that my own daughter didn't trust her own memories. Emma, do you remember last Tuesday when we made star-shaped grilled cheese and watched Encanto? Do you remember me being mean to you that day? Silence for 10 seconds. Then, no, you weren't mean. You sang all the songs with me. And you helped me with my math homework about addition. You used goldfish crackers to show me what 7 plus 5 equals. That's right, little star. Your memory is perfect. Grandma is sick, and she's telling you things that never happened because she's scared of losing you. Mr. Chen, Detective Santos whispered urgently, we've got the location. Fairholm General Store, cell tower triangulation puts them within a quarter mile. State Patrol is 20 minutes out. But then Emma's voice changed, became distant. Daddy, I have to go. Grandma's waking up and she'll be mad if she finds me with the phone. Emma, wait. The line went dead. Richard's laptop showed satellite images of the Fairholme area, dozens of rental cabins scattered through dense forest, summer vacation rentals that would be mostly empty in November. Patricia could have picked any one of them. Detective Santos, how long before your units arrive? Judge Harrison asked. 18 minutes. But Your Honor, if she realizes Emma made contact, she might run again. These mountain roads connect to dozens of logging trails. She could disappear completely. At 10:41 a.m., my phone buzzed with another text from Patricia's number. She called you, didn't she? I saw the call log. You have no idea what you've done, David. I was trying to save her from you, but now you've forced my hand. Then another message, Emma and I are going somewhere you'll never find us. Somewhere she'll be safe from monsters like you. Don't bother looking. By tonight, we'll be ghosts. Richard grabbed my arm. David, she's escalating into complete paranoid delusion. Emma calling you probably convinced her that even her granddaughter has been turned against her somehow. Judge Harrison was coordinating with FBI agents when Detective Santos's radio crackled, Unit 47 to dispatch. We have eyes on the Fairholme area. Found a silver Honda Civic abandoned behind the general store, but it's empty. No sign of subjects. My worst fear was confirmed. Patricia had moved Emma again. Detective Santos, I said, my voice barely steady, Patricia's been planning this for months. She has cash, she knows these mountains, and now she thinks everyone, including Emma, is her enemy. Santos nodded grimly. David, I need you to understand something. When people reach this level of paranoid thinking, when they believe they're protecting a child from imaginary threats, they sometimes. She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what she meant. Patricia might decide that if she couldn't save Emma from me, she'd save her from everything. At 10:52 a.m., as search helicopters were being deployed and roadblocks were going up across the Olympic Peninsula, I realized that all my months of careful evidence collection meant nothing if Patricia's delusions led her to a final, irreversible decision about my daughter's fate. Emma was out there somewhere in the wilderness with a woman who'd convinced herself that running forever, or worse, was better than letting me prove the truth. At 11:15 a.m., while search teams were spreading across the Olympic Peninsula, my phone rang again. This time it was Patricia's voice, and she sounded completely unhinged. You destroyed everything, David. Everything I built, everything I protected. Emma was safe with me until you poisoned everyone against us. Patricia, bring Emma home. She's scared and confused. Whatever you think you're protecting her from, running isn't the answer. Home. Her laugh was bitter and sharp. There is no home anymore. Your lies, your recordings, your manipulation, you've turned everyone against me. Even Emma doesn't understand what I've sacrificed for her. Detective Santos was frantically signaling the FBI tech team. They were trying to trace the call, but Patricia was smart enough to keep moving. Where are you, Patricia? Emma needs her medication for her asthma. It was a lie, but I needed to plant doubt about the wisdom of staying hidden. Don't you dare manipulate me with fake medical emergencies. I've been caring for that child while you were off playing victim. Her voice cracked. But she called you, didn't she? My own granddaughter, sneaking behind my back to contact her abuser. The paranoia was complete now. Patricia had rewritten reality so thoroughly that Emma's natural desire to talk to her father had become evidence of betrayal. Patricia, listen to me. I have recordings of every interaction with Emma. Video proof that I never hurt her. The court will. Your recordings prove nothing except how sick you are. Who secretly films their own child, David? What kind of monster sets up cameras to watch an 8-year-old? Richard leaned over and whispered urgently, she's projecting. Keep her talking, but don't engage with the delusions directly. Just tell me Emma is okay, I said. Tell me she's warm and fed and safe. Silence stretched for 30 seconds. When Patricia spoke again, her voice was smaller, more fragile. She keeps asking for you. Even after everything I've explained, everything I've shown her, she still asks when Daddy is coming to get her. For the first time, I heard doubt creeping into Patricia's voice. Maybe, somewhere beneath the paranoia and manipulation, she was starting to realize that Emma's love for me couldn't be fabricated or erased. She asks for me because I'm her father and I love her. Because in 8 years, I've never given her a reason to fear me. You know that's true, Patricia. I know what I know. But her conviction was wavering. I've seen the signs, heard the things she said. Things you coached her to say. Patricia, deep down, you know Emma was never afraid of me until you taught her to be. The line went quiet except for the sound of Patricia crying. In the background, I could hear Emma's voice, Grandma, why are you crying? Can we call Daddy again? I want to go home. We can't go home, sweetheart, Patricia whispered, and I don't think she realized the call was still active. There's no home left for us now. FBI Agent Morrison grabbed the phone from Detective Santos. Mrs. Chen, this is Agent Morrison with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're not in trouble yet, but taking Emma across state lines will make this a federal kidnapping case. Bring her back now, and we can work this out. The line went dead immediately. Agent Morrison looked grim. Last ping was from a cell tower near Port Angeles. If she crosses into Canada. She won't, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. Patricia's been planning this, but she's not thinking clearly anymore. She's scared and cornered, and Emma calling me broke something in her delusion. At 11:43 a.m., Richard's phone buzzed with an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, The Truth About David Chin. Inside was a 40-page document detailing every false allegation Patricia had made, complete with dates, times, and copies of the fabricated evidence she'd created. But at the end was a paragraph that made my hands shake. I realize now that I may have been wrong about some things. Emma's love for her father seems genuine, not manufactured. But I've gone too far to turn back. If I can't protect her my way, maybe it's time to let someone else try. Look for us at the place where David proposed to Sarah. Emma should know that story. Patricia. At 11:47 a.m., Patricia's cryptic message about the place where David proposed to Sarah hit me like a physical blow. Sarah and I had gotten engaged at Hurricane Ridge, a scenic overlook in Olympic National Park, nearly 3 hours from Fairholme, deep in mountain wilderness that would be treacherous to navigate with an 8-year-old. She's testing me, I told Richard as FBI agents scrambled to coordinate with park rangers. Patricia wants to know if I really loved Sarah, if I remember the details of our life together that she always claimed were fake. Detective Santos was already pulling up maps of Hurricane Ridge. David, that area is at 5,200 feet elevation. There's snow up there year-round, and with Emma not dressed for mountain weather. Agent Morrison radioed Park Service dispatch. We need immediate helicopter support for Hurricane Ridge Visitor Center and all access roads. 2 subjects, consider the child endangered by exposure. But as search teams mobilized toward the mountains, my phone buzzed with another message from Patricia, not Hurricane Ridge, David. Think harder. Where did you really propose? Sarah told me the true story before she died, not the pretty version you tell everyone else. My blood went cold. Sarah had told her mother about the real proposal location, something I'd never shared with anyone except my wife. 3 months before our official engagement, I'd impulsively proposed to Sarah during a panic attack in the parking lot of Harborview Medical Center, where she'd just finished a brutal 12-hour nursing shift. It wasn't romantic or planned. I'd been terrified of losing her and blurted out the question while she was still in scrubs, exhausted, and crying about a patient she couldn't save. We'd later staged the Hurricane Ridge proposal for photos and family stories, but the real moment had happened in a hospital parking lot at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. She's at Harborview, I told Agent Morrison. Patricia's taking Emma to the place where Sarah and I actually got engaged. She's trying to prove some twisted point about truth and lies. Downtown Seattle. That's over 2 hours from her last known location, Morrison said. Why would she risk driving back toward populated areas? Richard understood immediately. Because Patricia's narrative is falling apart. Emma called David, which proved she's not afraid of him. Patricia's own message admitted she might be wrong about the abuse. Now she's desperately trying to find proof that David's entire relationship with Sarah was built on deception. Detective Santos was coordinating with Seattle PD when another text arrived. Emma's asleep in the car. She keeps asking why we can't just go home and have dinner with Daddy like normal families do. She doesn't understand that there is no normal anymore. Meet me at Harborview Parking Garage, Level 3, Space 47, where you lied to my daughter about loving her. 3 p.m. Come alone, or Emma learns what abandonment really feels like. Agent Morrison shook his head. Absolutely not. We're not sending you into a potential hostage situation. She's not going to hurt Emma, I said, though my voice shook. Patricia loves her, in her own twisted way. But she's unraveling completely, and she needs to prove to herself that I'm the monster she spent 14 months claiming I am. Judge Harrison, who'd been coordinating with federal authorities, leaned forward. Mr. Chen, even if you're right about Mrs. Chen's intentions, her mental state has clearly deteriorated. People in acute paranoid episodes can become violent without warning. At 12:23 p.m., as law enforcement agencies scrambled to set up surveillance around Harborview Medical Center, one terrible thought kept echoing in my mind. Patricia had chosen the exact spot where Sarah and I had first talked about building a family together. She was planning to end this where it all began. At 12:31 p.m., while federal agents were positioning unmarked vehicles around Harborview Medical Center, my phone rang with Emma's number. But it wasn't Emma's voice. Daddy. The voice was Emma's, but the words were clearly being fed to her by Patricia. Grandma says I need to ask you why you lied about loving Mommy. My heart broke hearing my daughter being used as Patricia's puppet. Emma, sweetheart, I never lied about loving your mother. I loved her more than anything in the world, except for you. But Grandma says you only pretended to love Mommy in a pretty place with mountains. She says the real asking happened in a scary place where Mommy was sad. Patricia was coaching Emma in real time, feeding her twisted interpretations of my most private memories with Sarah. The scary place, where Sarah was sad, was the hospital parking lot where my wife had just lost a patient, a 7-year-old boy who reminded her of the children we hoped to have someday. Emma, the place where I really asked Mommy to marry me wasn't scary. It was honest. Sometimes the most important things happen in ordinary places, not just pretty ones. Grandma wants to talk to you now. Emma's voice grew distant as the phone was passed. Patricia's voice came through strained and exhausted. She doesn't understand why we're hiding, David. She keeps saying she wants to go home and make star pancakes with you on Saturday. Even after everything I've shown her, everything I've explained. Because none of it was true, Patricia. Emma's instincts are right. Her memories of me are real, the abuse stories are fiction you created. I found Sarah's journal, David. Patricia's voice cracked. After she died, I found pages and pages about how worried she was about your temper. About the way you'd slam doors when Emma cried too long. About how you'd disappear for hours when parenting got difficult. My stomach dropped. Sarah had kept a journal during Emma's colicky first year, when both of us were sleep-deprived and struggling. I had lost my temper a few times, never at Emma, never violently, but I definitely stormed out of the house in frustration when nothing would soothe her crying at 3 a.m. Patricia, that was 7 years ago. New parent stress, not abuse. Sarah and I worked through those issues together. The journal entries stopped very suddenly, David. Right after she wrote about being afraid to leave you alone with Emma during her night shifts. Agent Morrison was signaling frantically. They traced Patricia's location to a parking structure 12 blocks from Harborview. She was moving, staying mobile to avoid detection. Sarah stopped writing in that journal because Emma grew out of her colic phase and our lives got easier. You're taking normal parenting struggles and twisting them into. Then explain why Sarah never told me about your real proposal until 3 weeks before she died. Patricia's voice turned ice cold. Explain why she said she wished she'd married the man you pretended to be at Hurricane Ridge instead of the man who actually proposed to her in a hospital parking lot while she was having the worst night of her career. The accusation hit like a physical blow because it contained just enough truth to be devastating. Sarah had been having a terrible night when I proposed. She had been questioning whether we were ready for marriage, for children, for the responsibilities we were taking on. My impulsive proposal had come during her moment of doubt, not during a moment of joy. She said yes, Patricia. In that parking lot, in her scrubs, after the worst night of her career, she said yes because she loved me. She said yes because she was 24 years old and thought she had to. The journal makes it very clear. At 12:47 p.m., Patricia sent her location directly to my phone, Pier 70, South parking lot. You have 20 minutes to come alone and hear the truth about what Sarah really thought of you. After that, Emma and I disappear forever. Maybe Canada, maybe Mexico. Somewhere you can't find us and poison her against me like you've poisoned everyone else. Detective Santos grabbed my arm. David, Pier 70 is right on the waterfront. If she's planning to run, she could have a boat waiting. Once they're in international waters. The implication hung heavy in the air. Patricia was giving me one final confrontation, one last chance to face the evidence she'd been building against me for over a year. But now she had Sarah's journal, real documentation of my struggles as a new father, to support her delusions about my character. At 12:54 p.m., I made a decision that every law enforcement officer present tried to talk me out of. I was going to meet Patricia at Pier 70, but not alone and not unprepared. Agent Morrison, I need you to understand something, I said as we huddled in the FBI command vehicle. Patricia has been building this narrative for 14 months. She's taken every moment of normal parental struggle and weaponized it. If I don't face her accusations directly, if I don't address whatever Sarah wrote in that journal, Patricia will disappear with Emma believing I'm the monster her grandmother says I am. David, she's clearly having a psychotic break, Detective Santos argued. Rational conversation isn't possible with someone this deep in paranoid delusion. Richard pulled me aside. There's something else we need to consider. If Patricia really has Sarah's journal, and if it contains unflattering observations about your early parenting, that could surface in court even after we get Emma back. We need to know what we're dealing with. At 1:03 p.m., my phone buzzed with a photo that made my knees buckle. Emma, sitting on a concrete barrier at Pier 70, tears streaming down her face, holding a piece of paper with her mother's handwriting. Even from the distance, I could make out Sarah's careful script. I'm afraid to leave David alone with Emma during my night shifts. His temper has gotten so much worse since the baby came. The message below the photo read, she's reading her mother's real thoughts about you, David. Reading about how mommy was scared to leave her baby with daddy. How does it feel to have your daughter learn the truth? That's evidence tampering, Agent Morrison said grimly. She's psychologically torturing an 8-year-old with information the child can't possibly understand in context. I stared at the photo, remembering those dark early months after Emma's birth. Sarah working 12-hour nursing shifts while I struggled with a colicky baby and software development deadlines. Yes, I'd lost my temper. Yes, I'd slammed doors and gone for angry walks when Emma's crying felt endless. But I'd never hurt either of them, never been violent, never been the abuser Patricia was claiming I'd always been. We have to end this now, I told the assembled team. Emma's sitting 50 yards from open water, being force-fed twisted interpretations of her dead mother's private thoughts. Patricia's not just kidnapping her anymore, she's actively destroying an 8-year-old's ability to trust anyone. Detective Santos checked her watch. David, we have snipers positioned, boats in the water, and undercover officers within 30 yards of that pier. But if Patricia sees any of us, she won't hurt Emma, I said, trying to convince myself as much as them. Patricia believes she's saving her. The danger isn't violence, it's that she'll run again, and this time we won't find them. At 1:08 p.m., Agent Morrison handed me a nearly invisible earpiece and a GPS tracker disguised as a pen. You'll have constant communication with us. The moment things go sideways, we move in. Richard grabbed my shoulder. David, Patricia's going to try to break you down emotionally. She'll use Sarah's journal, Emma's presence, everything she can think of to make you admit to abuse that never happened. Don't let her rewrite your history. As I walked toward Pier 70, I could see Emma's small figure in the distance, still holding her mother's journal pages, still crying. Patricia stood behind her like a guard, scanning the area for signs of law enforcement. The confrontation that would determine my daughter's future was about to begin, and Patricia held what might be the most damaging weapon she'd ever found against me, my dead wife's honest thoughts about my worst moments as a new father. At 1:12 p.m., I was close enough to see Emma's face clearly for the first time in hours. She looked exhausted and confused, clutching pages from Sarah's journal like they were evidence in a trial she didn't understand. Patricia stood rigid behind her, scanning the pier for any sign that I brought back up. Daddy. Emma started to run toward me, but Patricia's hand shot out and caught her shoulder. Stay right there, sweetheart, Patricia said, her voice artificially sweet but her grip firm. Daddy and Grandma need to have a very important talk first. I stopped 20 feet away, my hands visible and empty. Patricia, you've made your point. Emma shouldn't be hearing adult conversations about her parents' private struggles. Let me take her home. Home. Patricia's laugh was bitter. Read this, David. Read what your wife really thought about you. She held up several pages of Sarah's handwriting. March 15, 2017, David disappeared again tonight when Emma wouldn't stop crying. Gone for 2 hours while I dealt with everything alone. I'm starting to think he never wanted this baby at all. Emma looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. Daddy, did you not want me? My heart shattered. Emma, baby, I wanted you more than anything in the world. Sometimes new daddies get scared and make mistakes, but that doesn't mean they don't love their babies with all their hearts. Patricia flipped to another page. April 3, 2017, found a hole in the nursery wall today. David claims he doesn't know how it got there, but there's plaster dust on his knuckles. I can't keep pretending this is normal new parent stress. I remembered that hole. I'd been trying to install a nightlight during one of Emma's screaming fits, hit a stud wrong with the drill, and punched the wall in frustration. Not my finest moment, but hardly evidence of abuse. Sarah helped me fix that wall the next day, I said calmly. We laughed about my terrible handyman skills while we spackled it together. Stop lying. Patricia's composure cracked. Emma, your daddy is doing it again, making up pretty stories to cover the ugly truth. But Emma was studying my face with the intensity that 8-year-olds bring to important decisions. Daddy, you look sad, not mad. When you're lying about little things like whether you ate vegetables, you get mad. But you look really, really sad right now. Through my earpiece, I heard Agent Morrison's voice. David, we've got movement. Unmarked boat approaching from the south. This might be her escape plan. Patricia must have heard something in my expression because she suddenly grabbed Emma's hand. We're leaving. Now. Patricia, wait. You said you wanted me to hear the truth about what Sarah thought. There are more pages in that journal, aren't there? Pages you haven't read to Emma. She hesitated, and I knew I'd guessed right. Read the entry from April 10th, I continued. 1 week after the wall incident. Read what Sarah wrote about me apologizing, about us going to couples counseling, about how proud she was when I learned to handle Emma's colic without losing my temper. Patricia's hand tightened on the journal pages. Those entries don't matter. The point is you're cherry-picking quotes from a woman who's been dead for 18 months, using them to terrorize her daughter. My voice carried across the pier, drawing attention from other visitors. Sarah kept that journal for 6 months, Patricia. 6 months of documenting our struggles and our growth as parents. You can't just read the bad parts to a child and call it truth. Emma looked between us, then tugged on Patricia's sleeve. Grandma, can I see Mommy's book? I want to read the parts about when she was happy. At 1:17 p.m., Patricia's carefully constructed narrative began to crumble as my 8-year-old daughter asked the one question that cut through months of manipulation. If Daddy was really scary, why did Mommy have more babies with him? Patricia's face went white. In all her planning, all her coaching, she'd never prepared for Emma to remember that Sarah had been 3 months pregnant when she died. At 1:19 p.m., Emma's innocent question about why Sarah would have had another baby with me hung in the air like a bomb that had just detonated. Patricia's face cycled through confusion, anger, and something that looked almost like recognition. That's different, Patricia stammered, but her voice lacked conviction. Your mommy she was trying to fix things. Sometimes women think having another baby will make Daddy behave better. But Emma wasn't buying it. At 8 years old, she might not understand adult relationships, but she understood her mother. Mommy was really, really happy about the baby. She bought tiny socks and everything. She wouldn't do that if she was scared of Daddy. Through my earpiece, Agent Morrison whispered, David, the boat is moving closer. 30 seconds and we're going to have to intervene. I needed to keep Emma talking, keep her focused on her real memories instead of Patricia's fabricated narrative. Emma, do you remember the last time you saw Mommy? What was she doing? She was packing her lunch for work, Emma said slowly, her brow furrowed in concentration. And she kissed you goodbye and said, take good care of our girls today, because she was calling the baby our little girl even though we didn't know yet. Patricia's grip on the journal pages was so tight they were starting to tear. That doesn't prove anything. Sarah was good at pretending. Patricia. I took a careful step closer. Sarah never pretended about anything in her life. You know that. She was the most honest person either of us ever knew, sometimes brutally honest. If she'd really believed I was dangerous, she would have left me. She would have protected Emma and the baby. For the first time since this nightmare began, doubt flickered across Patricia's face. Real doubt, not just the momentary wavering I'd heard in her voice. But the journal entries. She whispered. Are 6 pages out of a journal Sarah kept for 6 months. You found the pages where she was worried and scared, which every new parent is, and ignored the other 50 pages where she wrote about our family, our love, our plans for the future. Emma suddenly broke free from Patricia's grip and ran to me. I caught her in my arms, feeling her small body shake with exhaustion and confusion. Daddy, I'm really tired and I want to go home. Can we please just go home and have mac and cheese and watch a movie like normal? Patricia stood frozen, watching her granddaughter cling to the man she'd spent 14 months claiming was a monster. The cognitive dissonance was written all over her face. She's been coached, Patricia said, but her voice was hollow. You've manipulated her into thinking. Patricia, look at her. Emma had buried her face against my shoulder, and for the first time in hours, she looked peaceful. Does this look like a child who's been manipulated? Or does this look like a daughter who missed her father? At 1:23 p.m., Detective Santos's voice crackled through my earpiece. David, the boat captain is signaling. Patricia had arranged pickup, but he's refusing to take a distressed child. He's heading back to shore. Patricia heard the boat engine retreating and her last escape plan dissolved. She sank onto the concrete barrier where Emma had been sitting, still clutching Sarah's journal pages. I don't understand, she whispered. I was so sure. The signs were all there. The way you'd get frustrated, the way you'd leave when things got difficult. Because I was 25 years old with a colicky baby and no idea what I was doing, I said gently, adjusting Emma's weight in my arms. I wasn't perfect, Patricia. I made mistakes. But making mistakes doesn't make someone an abuser. Emma lifted her head from my shoulder. Grandma, are you sick? Daddy says sometimes people's brains get confused and make them scared of things that aren't really scary. Patricia looked at her granddaughter, really looked at her, and I saw 14 months of carefully constructed delusions beginning to crack apart. Maybe, Patricia whispered. Maybe Grandma's brain got very, very confused. At 1:27 p.m., Patricia slowly extended the journal pages toward me with shaking hands. There are other entries I didn't read, she admitted, her voice barely audible over the sound of waves against the pier. From later. After you started counseling. Emma slid down from my arms but stayed close, her small hand gripping my jacket. I took the pages carefully, scanning Sarah's familiar handwriting for entries Patricia had deliberately omitted. May 20th, 2017, I read aloud. David came home from his therapy session today with a book about postpartum anxiety in fathers. I didn't even know that was a real thing. He's been reading articles about new parent stress and actually apologized for making me feel like I was handling everything alone. Maybe we're going to be okay after all. Patricia's face crumpled. I didn't. I couldn't. June 3rd, 2017, Emma slept through the night for the first time in 4 months. Found David in the nursery at 2 a.m. anyway, just watching her breathe. He whispered, I'm sorry I wasn't better at this from the start, little star, and I realized he's been carrying so much guilt about those first difficult months. He's not the same man who punched that wall. He's better. Emma looked up at me with wide eyes. Daddy, is that when you started calling me Little Star? That's exactly when, I said, my voice thick with emotion. Because even when you were sleeping, you were the brightest thing in my whole world. Through my earpiece, Agent Morrison's voice was gentle but urgent. David, we've got Seattle PD moving in. Mrs. Chen, we need you to put your hands where we can see them. Patricia didn't resist as Detective Santos approached with 2 other officers. She looked completely broken, like someone waking up from a terrible dream to discover they'd destroyed everything they loved while sleepwalking. I kept reading the scared entries over and over, Patricia whispered as the officers reached us. Every time I started to doubt myself, every time Emma seemed happy with you, I'd go back to those pages and convince myself I was protecting her. Detective Santos knelt down to Emma's level. Hey there, sweetheart. Are you hurt? Do you need anything? I'm really hungry, Emma said matter-of-factly. And I need to use the bathroom. And I want to know if I'm in trouble for missing school. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Even after being kidnapped by her grandmother and dragged across the state, Emma was worried about her perfect attendance record. You're not in trouble for anything, little star, I assured her. Mrs. Peterson will understand when we explain what happened. Patricia looked at Emma with tears streaming down her face. Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. Grandma made some very big mistakes because I was scared of losing you. Emma walked over to Patricia with the fearless compassion that only children possess. Grandma, when my brain gets scared of monsters that aren't real, Daddy tells me to look for proof that I'm safe. Maybe you forgot to look for proof. At 1:34 p.m., as Patricia was being helped into a police vehicle, not under arrest yet, but clearly needing medical evaluation, Emma tugged on my jacket. Daddy, are we going to be okay now? Can we go home and be a normal family again? I picked her up, holding her tight against my chest as FBI agents began packing up their equipment and Detective Santos coordinated with Child Protective Services. Yeah, baby. We're going to be okay. But Emma, we need to talk about some of the things Grandma told you, some of the scary stories that weren't true. It might take time for your brain to remember that Daddy never hurt you. Emma nodded solemnly. Will you show me the videos you made? Grandma said you were watching me like a spy, but maybe you were really just trying to remember all our good times together. At 1:37 p.m., as we walked toward Detective Santos's car to begin the long journey back to normal life, I realized that the hardest part wasn't over. Now I had to help my daughter heal from 8 months of psychological manipulation while rebuilding trust that Patricia had systematically destroyed. But for the first time in over a year, Emma's hand was in mine, and she wasn't afraid. 3 weeks later, at 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday, Judge Harrison's gavel came down with the finality I'd been waiting 14 months to hear. Full custody is awarded to David Chen, effective immediately. Mrs. Patricia Chen's visitation rights are suspended pending completion of court-ordered psychological evaluation and family therapy. Emma squeezed my hand from the seat beside me. She'd insisted on being present for the final hearing, wanting to tell the judge the truth about Daddy, in her own words. Over the past 3 weeks, we'd spent hours going through my recorded footage together, not the confrontational moments with Patricia, but the gentle, normal interactions that proved our bond had never been broken. Mr. Chen, Judge Harrison continued, I've reviewed over 40 hours of your recorded evidence. The footage clearly demonstrates not only your innocence regarding the alleged abuse, but also shows systematic coaching of the minor child by Mrs. Chen. The court finds that you acted reasonably in documenting these interactions given the serious nature of the false allegations. Richard leaned over and whispered, she's calling them false allegations on the record. That's huge for the defamation case. Detective Santos, sitting in the gallery, had testified earlier about Patricia's confession during her psychological evaluation. My mother had admitted to fabricating 12 of the 17 CPS reports, coaching Emma's testimony, and deliberately distorting Sarah's journal entries. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the forensic interviewer, confirmed that Emma showed no signs of abuse trauma and that her original statements had been heavily influenced by leading questions and repeated exposure to suggested scenarios. Furthermore, Judge Harrison said, the court is referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential charges of filing false police reports, child endangerment, and custodial interference. Emma had been in therapy twice a week with Dr. Rebecca Martinez, a specialist in parental alienation cases. Yesterday's session had been a breakthrough. Emma finally admitted that she'd never actually remembered me hurting her, only remembered Patricia telling her that I had. Her 8-year-old brain had been trying to reconcile her love for me with her grandmother's insistence that I was dangerous, creating the confusion and fear that had broken my heart during those supervised visits. Daddy, Emma whispered as the courtroom began to clear, does this mean Grandma can't take me away anymore? Never again, little star. We're going home together, and nobody can change that. Patricia sat in the back row with her court-appointed attorney, looking smaller and frielier than I'd ever seen her. The psychological evaluation had diagnosed her with severe anxiety disorder and paranoid ideation triggered by Sarah's death and her fear of losing Emma. She'd been placed on medication and ordered into intensive therapy, with the possibility of supervised visitation only after 6 months of treatment. Before we left the courthouse, Patricia approached us in the hallway. Emma instinctively moved closer to me, but didn't hide behind my legs like she might have weeks ago. David, Patricia's voice was barely audible, I know sorry isn't enough. I know I can't undo what I did to both of you. But I need Emma to know that none of this was her fault. My brain got very sick, and I made terrible choices. Emma looked up at her grandmother with the matter-of-fact wisdom of childhood. Dr. Martinez says sick brains can get better with medicine and talking to doctors. Maybe when you're better, we can have tea parties again. But only if Daddy says it's okay. At 4:23 p.m., Emma and I walked into our apartment together for the first time in over a year. I'd taken down all the hidden cameras, replacing them with normal family photos. The walls that had once documented my innocence now displayed Emma's artwork and school pictures, the decorations of a real home, not a surveillance station. Can we make star pancakes for dinner? Emma asked, already pulling ingredients from the cabinet with the confidence of a child who finally knew she belonged somewhere. Absolutely. And we can watch Encanto for the 15th time if you want. As Emma mixed batter and sang along to the soundtrack playing from my phone, I realized the most important truth of all, we hadn't just survived Patricia's lies. We'd come home.